Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We're learning Mishnah Yisukah, Parakeh, Chapter 5, Mishnah Ches, Mishnah 8, and today we'll be completing Maseches Sukkah. Okay, so Chal Liyoyisem Echad Lafsik B'Tayim. The previous Mishnah discussed what happens when you have Shabbos and Yontif next to each other. Where you had Shabbos, let's say you had Yontif preceding Shabbos, Shabbos preceding Yontif. And we said there that even though that's not Shabbos, that's part of Yontif, nonetheless, since the Kohanim all had to be there for that Shabbos, because we're so close to Yontif, therefore they divided up the Lechem Apanim equally amongst all the Mishmaras, all the groups of the Kohanim that were present. Mishnah Ches is the following case. Let's say there's a day in between Yontif and Shabbos. So let's say the situation is where either the Yontif ends on Thursday or begins on Monday. Okay? If Yontif ends on Thursday, so theoretically, they can go home Friday. You can understand why they won't go home Friday and they'll stick around for Shabbos. Or if, let's say, the Yontif begins on Monday, so they don't have to be there for the Shabbos before, they could travel Sunday. But understandably, we can understand that there would be Kohanim who would want to be there before Shabbos already. So in that situation, how do we deal with dividing up the Lechem Apanim? So there it's going to be different than what we had in yesterday's case. Mishmar Shazmanoi Kavua, the Mishmar, the group of Kohanim that was there set time to be there to do the service in the Beis HaMikdash that week. Hayonoito Eser Chalas. They would take 10 of the Chalas. Don't forget, the Lechem Apanim was 12 loaves. So we say the Mishmar, the group, or actually, as we will see, the groups, that it was their set time to be there. They would take 10 chalas and divide it up amongst themselves. But Misakev and the ones who were there, meaning the rest of the groups of the Kohanim that were staying there for Shabbos, because of the fact that it was still that close to Yontif, Neitel Shtayim, they take 2. So in the case, yesterday's case, where you have one Shabbos Yontif following each other, everybody gets the same. All the Mishmaras divide up everything equally. As we're going to see, when it comes to regularly, every Shabbos, we'll see how the Chalos are divided up. But when it comes to the case where you've got a day in between Shabbos and Yontif, there we say 10 Chalos go to the groups of Kohanim that are supposed to be there. They're supposed to be there anyway because it's their week, while the ones that are there because of Yontif will divide up 2 chalas. Now, during the rest of the year, meaning every Shabbos, where we know every Shabbos, they would go ahead and divide up the new chalas, the new lechem apanim will be put on the table, the old ones taken off, and those were divided. How did they do that all year round? The answer is hanichnas neitel sheish. The incoming group would take 6, and the outgoing would take 6. What happened is, as we've mentioned before, when it came to the Kohanim divided up into 24 groups, and you would have a group that would be serving per week, which came out, that most of them would come twice a year, serving a week serving a week at a time. Now, when was the change of the guard? The change of the guard was on Shabbos. You had the past week's group of Kohanim, the past week's Mishmar. They would do the morning daily sacrifice. And then the new group, the incoming group, they would do the afternoon daily sacrifice. Now, when was the point, though, that the actual change took place? The answer is it took place when they went ahead and I shouldn't say when it actually took place, but already the distinction between them started I think it started, I would say. It took place, the change took place when they divided up the bread. Because when they would replace the old bread with the new bread and divide up the old bread, how is the old bread divided up? Half goes to last week's group, and half goes to the incoming group. That's what it means. The one coming in takes 6. The one leaving takes 6. Now, Rabbi Yehuda says the division was a little different. The incoming one took 7. And the outgoing took 5. Why? So the way it's explained is the outgoing Mishmar opened the gates of the temple in the morning. Right? That was part of their job. Thus, it would be fitting that they complete the service by closing them at night. It would be fitting they should stick around to close them, but they didn't. Instead, it was the incoming Mishmar that closed the gates. So the incoming Mishmar, the incoming group, kind of took over, did what the previous group really should have been doing. And therefore, the incoming Mishmar was rewarded with a greater portion of the Lechem Apanim. According to Rabbi Yehuda, because the incoming group did what the outgoing group really should have done, therefore they're rewarded, they're entitled to more of the Lechem Apanim. But that's not the halacha. It was divided equally amongst the two groups. Now, Hanichnasin Cholkim B'Tzafin. The incoming group of Kohanim, when they would divide up, now we gave them the 6 loaves of bread and they would divide it up. Where did they divide it up? B'Tzafin, north. In the northern part of the courtyard, that is where they divided up the Lechem Apanim. Why there? Why was it there? The answer is because the Tzafin, the north, is where the Kadshe Kudshim, where the holiest sacrifices are slaughtered. So the north is considered the most prominent of the directions of the courtyard, because that's where the Kadshe Kudshim, the sacrifice known as Holy of Holies, the most sacred ones are slaughtered, and therefore we say that is the most prominent of the directions of the courtyard. It was there that the incoming would divide up their Lechem Apanim, basically signal to everyone, we're the new group. We are here. We're ready to go. Okay. V'hayotzei, and the outgoing one, v'hayotzin, and the outgoing groups, Badarim, they did it on the opposite side in the south, on a side that wasn't as prominent as the north. Okay. So we just said that there was a specific place where the incoming would divide up their Lechem Apanim. Bilga, there was a Mishmar, a group, a family. I guess it was to be called, Mishmar. A Mishmar called Bilga. They all had names. They had family names. And there was one Mishmar called Bilga. La'olam chalekas b'darim. Even when they came in to do the service for the week, they divided up their Lechem Apanim in the south. If everybody else did in the north and they did in the south, then what did that mean? That was not very, that wasn't a sign of prominence, right? That was not a sign of prominence. Everybody else does it in the north, in the prominent part. You always are in the less prominent part. That's a sign that there's something not good. V'tabata kavua, and its ring was always closed. Now, what does a ring mean? Let me explain. Let me read it to you, and I'll show you a picture. Rings were attached to the floor on the northern side of the altar. See this? You start with the ring that's open on top, and then you turn it over, and the two ends are set into the ground, and the open part is underground. Okay, meaning you have these rings that they basically had some kind of a tube inside that you could move the top. They had some kind of a tube or a ring inside the ground that you could kind of turn it. Now, they resembled rings were attached to the floor on the northern side of the altar. They resembled a circle with an open section that rotated through a semicircular groove in the floor. Follow that? There was a semicircular groove in the floor. It started as an open, it was like a half circle, right? And there's a groove in the ground to rotate it that you can then have the closed part on top. When the Kohanim were ready to slaughter an offering, they rotated the ring so that the open section faced upward, placed the animal's neck in the ring, and they rotated it again so that the open section was beneath the courtyard floor, locking the animal's head in place. That's how they kept it in place. Okay. Each of the 24 mishmaros were assigned its own ring to use during its week of service. Every group had its own ring, except Bilga. Actually, Bilga had a ring, and their ring was always shut tight. They couldn't move it. They couldn't open it. Which means, so what do they do when they have to sacrifice the animals? They have to use somebody else's. Also, showing that there's something not right here, right? And kind of a embarrassing situation. The chaloina sesuma, and their closet, which means that every mishmar had its own closet for their knives, and Bilga didn't. Bilga's was sesuma. Their closet was sealed, which means at one point they had a closet. At one point they had a ring, and then it was sealed. Can't use it anymore. Sorry, you're gonna have to borrow somebody else's. Why? This is how the Mishnah. But that's how the Mishnah ends. Bilga. So again, Bilga always divided their lechem upon him in the south. Their ring was shut tight. Their window, their closet was closed up, was sealed off. And end of the Mishnah. Why? Why was the family of Bilga treated this way? And this is the Bartura brings down from the Gemara, a daughter of the Mishmar of Bilga, a daughter from someone in that family, rejected Judaism and married an officer in the Greek army. When the Greeks invaded the Heichal of the temple, they invaded the Beis HaMikdash in the time of the Hanukkah story, she banged her sandal on the altar. She walked in, she took her sandal, and she banged the Mizbeach and shouted, "Wolf, wolf, how long will you consume the money of the Jews by devouring their sacrifices and not protect them in their time of need?" That's what she said. Because of that, the sages punished the entire Mishmar. And it could have been like, okay, first of all, she said it. Why are we punishing everybody else? What's this collective retaliation? What's this collective punishment? So the sages punished the entire Mishmar because they reasoned that this woman would not have behaved in this way had she not heard her father disparage the temple service. Step number one. If she said this, it didn't just happen because on her own she said this. It happened because she heard it by her parents. And not even blaming it on her husband, right? Because the husband knew what the husband know. But she went after the Mizbeach. She knew what it's so about. She went after it. She only would have gone after it if she would have heard something from her father in her house. Okay, that's the Gemara says. Shusa de Yenuka, Aidaba de Ima. The talk of children either comes from the father or the mother. Rosh Hashiva B'Shmosh Kamenetsky should be used to say, I'm not sure if nowadays with how children are so open to so many other things, they're not just getting all the references from their home. If that would apply, but I'll tell you a story afterwards where it was I had such a story that it was nothing to talk about. That what the child was saying came from the parents. All right, so that's her family. Why are we punishing the whole extended group? And they were afraid that if her father had this attitude, he may have had a harmful influence on the Kohanim who served with him. For such is human behavior, as expressed by the rabbinic saying, "Oy l'rasha, oy l'rasha, oy l'shchenai." Woe to the wicked man, woe to his neighbor. You have a bad neighbor, there's a good chance you are going to be influenced. So if this father had disparaged the Beis HaMikdash to the point that his daughter came out in the open again at that point in time about it, then they were concerned that this man has had influence on all the Kohanim that he's connected with. And therefore, in order either to make sure that they kind of learned their lesson, not to be influenced, or to just make sure of it, or to show other people not to be influenced, therefore, they said, this family, we're going to single them out. And they're not going to, and they're going to basically have to be embarrassed. They're going to have to go through, clearly not a bit of embarrassing situation when they were treated differently than everybody else. Have a wonderful day. We finished Mishnah Yisukah, and tomorrow we will begin the new Masechta Mishnayos. Wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, here's my story.